Hi everyone, this is Steve Kodad of the Feng Shui Cure. I welcome you to the training for Feng Shui Staging Professional. Really appreciate you deciding to sign up and registering for this class. This is the initial video that I needed you to watch to start off with. And then of course we're going to start with our first webinar in a few weeks, a few days. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was a realtor in 3 different states, and I've been teaching, it seems like forever, in public and private schools and in 3 colleges. And I even taught for 2 years in a corporate world for AT&T. My first degree was in mathematics, and that is what I taught in public and private schools. I owned a 30-plus agent real estate company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a certified home stager, certified feng shui consultant with actually 3 designations from 3 different schools. I have created and operate a very, very unique home evaluation company using feng shui in Southwest Florida. And I primarily work from north of Tampa all the way down to Fort Myers. I've written 3 books. My latest one is The Feng Shui Cure for the Home Seller. It was finished and published in November of 2016. The first book was in 2006. Anyway, again, thank you for signing up for this training. This is the designation that you will be receiving, Feng Shui Staging Professional. And there are a lot of benefits that this gives you. A lot of you probably think this is the #1 benefit, and might be. It offers your homeowners, your sellers, something very, very different and powerful than any of the other agents in your area, in your locale. You'll also be able to transform your own house or business. This is something that surprisingly will help you quite a bit if you decide to organize your office using feng shui principles. You can help your friends and family, and you'll be able to help somebody build a home correctly using feng shui. You'll actually be able to tell them where the best place for the bathrooms are, where the best place for a bed to go or not to go, and so forth. So it can really help quite a bit if you're helping somebody in the building process. And some folks even take this training, actually change their career or make this a second job. Now, there are a lot of different definitions for feng shui. If you've picked up several books in your lifetime, you've probably seen that. Here's my favorite definition of feng shui. It's living in harmony with the natural world. And there are 2 key words in there that I'd like you to pick up on, because you're going to be seeing them and hearing them a lot through the webinars. Harmony is one of them. And the next one is the word natural. The idea is to create a very natural environment, considering the outside world. Now, I like to follow up with backing things up with studies and scientific surveys and stuff like that. I needed to hear these myself when I started 14 years ago. Again, my first degree is in mathematics, and my other degrees are in very rational pursuits, I promise you. And I needed something to back up my thinking, not only for myself, but also for my clients. One of the things that's important about feng shui is the idea of sunlight. And here's a study about sunlight and office workers, those who were lucky enough to have windows in their office, and the unlucky ones that did not have any kind of way of connecting with the outside world during work. They found out there was a strong correlation that employees who actually had windows or a way of looking outside we're actually a lot healthier. And that even included with respect to cancer. Sunlight is a very important aspect to a human being, as you probably already know. But it's also a very important aspect of how a house is shown, how it is perceived. So let's remember the idea of sunlight and how important it is. The second study had to do with trees and landscaping, and it was conducted in Wisconsin. And they found out that the more green space where you live, it seems like the happier you seem to be. And they did this study by using satellites and actually measuring the tree canopy in particular locations. And they found out that when you have less than 10% tree canopy, that the folks in that area just seem to be more depressed, more stressed, and more anxious. And they found out it didn't matter how much money you had either. You certainly went through the same aspects. So tree canopy is a very important aspect. The natural part of our world is very important for our health, mentally and physically. And, don't panic if you live in the city or you don't have as much of a connection. Bringing in live plants to your home and office helps a great deal. It helps a great deal when you're selling a house too. Again, something that you're going to hear again and again. So again, sunlight and bringing in plants are very positive aspects that raise the spirits of a person that is looking at your listing. Now, these are the Chinese characters that stand for feng shui. And it's an art or a science, however you want to look at it, created in China, primarily South China, where the topology sort of lent itself to this philosophy. The words stand for wind and water. Feng is wind, shui is water. And what's important about that, those are the two most prevalent ways of moving energy around our planet. And energy is a big aspect of feng shui, how we work with it. A very simplistic definition is the art of placement. You can use that if you need to. But as you're going to find out over the next several weeks, feng shui is so much more about where the bed goes or where the couch goes. So much more. An interesting aspect for especially y'all real estate agents and home stagers that it's found in other parts of the world under different names. And I found that very intriguing because they develop their own systems and a lot of the systems are very, very similar. To name some of them, in India, it's known as Washnu. In Vietnam, it's called Feng Tui. In Thailand, they think of it as Jui. In Korea, it's called Poonsgu. I'm going to stop right there for a second to tell you a quick story. When I was a co-owner of a real estate company in Charlotte, one of the agents was Korean. His name was Chong Choi. Chong was a super guy and very active in real estate in the area, did very, very well. And I remember bringing up the idea of something called feng shui to him, and he had no idea what I was talking about. But then when I started to describe the idea, he knew of it as something else, Poonsgu. So again, I think you can find this could be very helpful to you if you have somebody in your backseat showing them homes from India or Vietnam or wherever. They just might know of it as a different name. But in the rest of the world, we sort of refer to it as feng shui. Now, there are certain concepts that you have to get really, really strong with. You have to understand them. And so I always start all of my classes, whether it's live or online, talking about three particular concepts. The first one is about the idea of qi. You've probably heard the term before. The term has become a lot more common nowadays because of the acceptance of things like acupuncture. But anyway, qi, real important aspect that we need to get good at to create an environment that really comes off as feeling really good. So qi is our life spirit. It what makes us move and alive every day. And depending on who I'm speaking to, often I replace the word qi with the word energy. It's a little more acceptable to some people. You'll have to know your clients as well as possible, which word you decide to use when you talk to them at a listing appointment or when you talk to them in the car. I use the word energy quite a bit. I especially used it quite a bit when I was living in the Charlotte area. And just remember that you can replace the word qi with that. An important thing for you to understand is, again, feng shui has a lot to do with working and manipulating qi, or energy. And qi is everywhere. It's been proven scientifically that everything on this planet is nothing but energy. You are nothing but energy. The ceiling above you, the chair that you're sitting in, everything is energy, just vibrating at a very different pace. So I think that ties in quite strongly for you to understand and believe in this idea, an idea that's been around for thousands and thousands of years ago. Now, we have two pictures here. Both of them are tremendously important for you to consider. Believe it or not, there's actually poor or bad qi. So the picture down at the bottom represents two bad types of qi. Qi that we want to stay away from, that is really sort of useless for what we're trying to do, whether we're selling or staying and trying to be successful in the home that we're living in. If you notice the trees are somewhat underwater. That is not natural. That is not normal. So something very, very forceful happened. Okay, whether a dam further up broke, or we had some torrential downpours of rain, maybe even a hurricane, but something way too forceful happened, something that was not normal. So we stay away from too forceful. But if you also notice, the water is starting to slow down in this picture. That's why I picked this picture. It's stagnating. So we stay away from qi that is stagnant. It doesn't help us. So what we're looking for is what you see in the top right-hand picture. We don't want it forceful. We don't want it totally stopped. We want it to look like what you see up in the top right. Now, probably in some case or another, you have walked through a park or you walked by a stream and you noticed that it was going back and forth, probably pretty slowly, in a meandering pattern. The word meandering is a word that you should remember. We're trying to get our energy coming into our houses, into our offices in a meandering pattern. So it goes back and forth. And at times when you're walking by a stream, I'm sure you've wondered if it's even moving. Well, it is moving. It's just slow. And that is much, much better. It's continually moving, but it's doing it slowly. So that's what we're looking for. And in feng shui, this is really the number one goal, is to make sure we have an abundant, consistent amount of energy coming into our environments. When we do, the house is so much better, feels so much better. So we want it to come in consistently and smoothly, under control. A second concept is the idea of what was considered to be the perfect building site thousands of years ago. So even though you might not be getting into the idea of building a house with somebody, although some of you will for sure, This concept is extremely, extremely important that you're going to be hearing over and over. Now, if you look at this picture, this is sort of the ideal setup thousands of years ago for where somebody would put their house or maybe their temple. So they checked out the environment. The environment was very, very important to them. Really the most important thing. And a lot of folks that you're going to have in your car are going to think of the same thing. So looking again at that picture, they wanted to build their house in a situation like this, where you see that mountain to the left. They build their house about a third to half a way up that mountain. So they had their backs secure or supported. But that wasn't enough. They were also looking for a location that to the left and to the right, there were maybe smaller hills or at least a forest that would protect their flanks. And that wasn't enough either. They were also looking for a situation that when they looked straight ahead, especially, they could see who or what was coming their way from miles away. So this particular situation is been referred to many, many times as the classic armchair. So it had a mountain in the back, it had protection on the sides, and it had a perfect view so you could see what was coming your way. And this idea is used inside and outside of how we work with feng shui. So where you put your bed, where you put your couch is going to use the classic armchair. So you've got to get good at using this to give the client a subconscious feeling of protection, safety. Now, the ideal feng shui site would certainly have lush trees, plenty of clean water, warm sunshine, and gentle, gentle breezes. I'm going to emphasize the last one for a second. I always have somebody that wants to know we don't put the house or the temple at the top of the mountain. Well, the reason why is that up there, we're going to get extremes, and extremes are bad feng shui. That goes for how you decorate, that goes for how you landscape, and so forth. So we stay away from extremes. So if you put your house up at the top of that mountain, what would happen is you would be constantly battling higher or stronger winds. So you put it up third or halfway up, you got your back much better protected, okay? And you don't have to put up with those strong winds. Now, when you pick up a book and you see the classic armchair, this is what you're probably going to see. You're going to see a house located in a position like this. The mountain behind them is symbolically represented in feng shui by the tortoise. And on the left of the house, it's protected by what they refer to as the green dragon. And on the right, you're protected on that flank by the white tiger. And then, representing being able to see for a long distance is an animal called a phoenix, so that you can see for a long, long way. So again, if you think about this, even if you went into a restaurant and they gave you your choice of where you would sit, I doubt you would pick a table in the middle or the center of the room. You would go to the outside, probably to a booth if they had it, have your back protected, and be able to look at the doorway and see what was coming your way. We're wired this way. Now, the evolution of feng shui actually started with the idea of grave sites. So the first school, which is known as the form school, had a lot to do with making sure that a relative was able to rest in a site that gave them peace. And so they protected the backs, protected the sides of the place that they placed them, and made sure they had a great view. classic armchair. Form school was the first school. And it actually is a school that takes precedence over all the other schools I'm about to name to you. So you might have somebody in your car that is thinking maybe something else. But if there is any conflict between form school and these other schools, you always take the side of this one and use classic armchair. A lot of people think of feng shui as with respect to compasses and direction. Well, again, there are other schools. And so you might have somebody in your car, and we'll be doing a little example in just a moment of 8 Mansion. These are just 2 of many compass schools. And then in 1985-86, another school coming across the Pacific Ocean from the area of Tibet started, and it's got several different names to it, called like Black Hat. Now we're going to do a quick exercise so you understand where people might get the direction they're trying to get you to help them with. A lot of people in your car are thinking, look, if I'm into feng shui, I should be facing south, for example, or east, or whatever. And you're probably wondering where they're getting these directions from. Well, here's one way it happens. We're about to find for you your 8 directions that every one of us has. And there are 4 negative ones, which I'm not spending a lot of time on. So anyway, you start with a person's gender and their birth date. It's that simple. So using a chart, which you can find on the internet if you don't want to go through these formulas, I'm going to give you the formulas right now. You can find your 4 auspicious directions and 4 inauspicious directions. And what that gives you, as an example, a male born in 1953 will find out that his Gua number is 2. His special number is 2. And that will give us the following information. His auspicious directions, his most positive directions to face are northeast, northwest, west, and southwest. It also gives him his 4 inauspicious directions. If we were doing a female born in 1967, you would find out her Gua number is a 9, and her auspicious directions are east, north, southeast, and south. Granted, that means little to you right now, but we'll show you in a second what that really means, what those 4 directions mean to you. Now, here's how you calculate your Gua number. You might want to do this for your significant other, okay, after you do it for yourself. But even if you don't want to do the calculation, you can find it on the internet without a problem. Just type in Gua number. Okay, to calculate a female's Gua number, you add the digits in the birth year. So 1961 is 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 1, which is 17. But you need to keep going until you get a single digit. So 1 plus 7 is 8. And you think you're going to stop right there. Well, to calculate your Gua number this way, you then have to add a 4 if you're a female. You get 12, and then you've got to keep going until you get a single digit. So 1 plus 2 is 3. This woman's Gua number is 3. If a lady comes out to 5, you'll end up using 8 as your Gua number. For a male, it's done a little differently. You add the digits in your birth year and go until you get a single digit, and then there's a slightly different formula. So we're going to use 1954 for him. 1 plus 9 plus 5 plus 4 is 19. Keep on going. 1 plus 9 is 10. Keep on going. 1 plus 0 is 1. You subtract the single digit from 11. In this case, we just happen to get another double digit. 11 minus 1 is 10, so you got to go on until you get the single digit at the end. 1 plus 0 is 1. His GWA number is 1. And if his number comes out to a 5, then we'll look at number 2, GWA number 2. There's the formulas. Believe it or not, there's even another set of formulas. And again, you can find these on the internet if you'd like. So let's look at the four most auspicious directions. Okay. So if your GWA number is a 1, folks, your auspicious directions are in order. The sequence is important. Southeast, south, east, and north. If your number is a 2, in the sequence that you should write down is northeast, northwest, west, and southwest. Again, you don't know what each one of these represent yet, so don't worry. We'll show you. But all of these could be what that person in your car says, I want my house to face west. I want my house to face southwest. If your GWA number comes out to a 3, it's south, southeast, north, and east. If your number is a 4, it comes out to north, east, south, southeast. If you're a 5, remember this is a special case. If you come out to a 5, a female will look at the 8, the male will look above and use 2. So if you're a male and you came out with a 5, you go up to where it says 2, and your auspicious directions are northeast, northwest, west, and southwest. You come out to a 6, here is your auspicious directions. I'm only reading them so you have a chance to jot these down. But it's west, southwest, northeast, northwest. If you're a 7, it comes out to northwest, northeast, southwest, west. If you're an 8, it comes out to southwest, west, northwest, northeast. And finally, if your GWA number comes out to be a 9, your auspicious directions are east, north, southeast, south in that sequence. So again, the sequence is very important for you. The first position is best for somebody's prosperity. And a lot of the folks in your car will be concerned with that idea. So let's say you have somebody in your car. Okay, you might have a couple in your car. And especially if he is the breadwinner, he will think that he needs to probably take precedence here. She is the breadwinner, which is now more and more the case. Actually, we should take her into account first. So if let's say they come out to an 8, they might want to be facing their house southwest, or possibly their bed in a particular facing southwest, and so forth. If they're more interested in the idea of longevity or romance, they might pick the second direction. If you're 8, the second direction is west. If they're really interested or possibly even concerned about their health, they might pick the third direction in the sequence. So again, staying with 8, they would be thinking about northwest as being very important. And finally, 4th is peace and stability, which is often the best situation if you're thinking about your sleeping. Okay, so those are why the sequence is so important to you. First position is prosperity. Second is longevity and romance. Third has to do with their health. And 4th is peace. Now, the 8 most impressionable moments for any home is something that we're going to be using over and over and over. I found out a long time ago, 12 to 14 years ago, that there were certain aspects of a house that were more important than others when you're thinking about feng shui. So I felt, well, this is like a series of tests that we need to pass. And if we pass these series of tests of 8 impressionable moments, we have a much better possibility of getting an offer for the house. So let's start with the first one. The first test, or the first impressionable moment in feng shui for selling a house, would be the curb appeal. And frankly, this is probably the most important one on this list. And something that I will be stating in the webinars is, if you have people in your circle where they're trying to sell their house, and they have very little money to prepare the house, I always try to get them to put it all into the curb appeal. The curb appeal is definitely the most important of the 8 tests, but we need to try to take care of all 8. The second one, some folks would think is part of the curb appeal, and I guess I can understand that. But I found out that a lot of people would lose interest when the walk from the car to the front door, the entrance, was not terribly exciting, actually hurt the situation. So as you're going to find out, the way we construct or create a pathway is very important. The third one is actually at the entrance. The entrance is extremely important in feng shui. It actually has its own special name. It's called the mouth of qi. So that front door is so important to what we're trying to accomplish here. So we will try to make sure that we do a special job here. This is the main place where the qi comes from outside, down the streets, down the sidewalks, and finally being attracted into our house. So we've got to get this right, the entrance. The fourth test, or impressionable moment, is when they first walk over the threshold and they're taking their first glance around. They're in the foyer. The next test is the room of first impression, which, as you're going to find out, we're going to try to make it to the right or to the left, depending on what is actually there, the blueprint of the house. Room of first impression. The next one has to do with the flow through the house. Is it easy to walk through? And then I'm going to group the last 2 so I can tell you that these are the 2 most important rooms in feng shui in a house. So they must be done extremely well. We're talking about the kitchen and the master bedroom. The kitchen represents a lot of things in feng shui. It represents wealth, for one thing. It represents health and nourishing the family. The master bedroom represents restoring our energy. And it's very, very important that we create a special sanctuary there, and it comes off that way. So those are the 8 tests, or 8 most impressionable moments. We'll be covering each one of these in depth, spending a lot of time on it. So this is your first time seeing that. Now, you probably have noticed this. If you've had buyers in your car, they miss quite a bit sometimes. You wonder what they're focusing on, why they're not remembering certain really great attributes of that house. They're really sort of unclear or baffled. So 95% of what happens around us and your buyer, it never actually reaches our conscious. And that is actually an extremely good thing. Human beings actually have a reality of about 5% that they spend most of their attention on at any particular moment. They want to be able to react quickly and strongly whatever is put in front of them so they can handle it. This made a lot of sense when people lived on a savanna or in the mountains. They had to be able to react quickly. There might be something that is very, very scary for them. But we're not any different nowadays. We have that 5% that we handle and then move on. So everything else that goes on around us will seep into our subconscious. And that subconscious is something that feng shui handles beautifully. So keep in mind the 95.5%, you'll hear that once again. So there are benefits in a house. There are specific rooms or views. Often they are not registering with the buyer. Feng Shui handles this better than anything that I've ran into. So by setting it up correctly, by going through the steps that I'm going to be giving you over the next few weeks, you'll see how we set it up so that benefits are actually registering and they can recall these things. Very, very important. We don't want them to forget the most important things. We want to make sure that your house that you're trying to sell comes off as special and one to definitely put on their short list. Now, you've probably heard of bad four-letter words. Maybe some of you use them. But in Feng Shui, this is a dreaded 7-letter word. It's called clutter. And I know if you've done any reading, you probably think about that kind of thing, that Feng Shui has a lot to do with clutter. And it does. It has a lot to do with how you move around a room, how you move around a yard. How easy is it? Is it simple? And if you look at the couple in that picture, they've got so much stuff in that room that it's probably very difficult for them to find something very quickly. They're very disorganized. They've made their life more frustrating and stressful because of this. You can imagine when you're trying to sell a house that this kind of thing hurts in so many ways. It makes the room come off as smaller, not taken care of very well. So too much of anything makes it feel smaller. And if you've been in real estate for any time at all, you know that you're selling square footage, or at least the perception of how big it is. Feng Shui symbolically has a lot to do with creating room for new, better opportunities to come into our life. So if you have a lot of things that you're just cluttering up your life with, you're actually stopping the new possibilities to come to you. So a very bad word is limitation, something that I would always talk about when I did my listing presentations. We never want to show any type of limitation in the house for sale, that it has great possibilities for everything. So good Feng Shui promotes, of course, spaciousness and the opportunity to bring in new opportunities. So we'll be doing a lot on clutter, and clutter symbolically means a lot of things in Feng Shui. So there are two feelings that are impacted greatly that are often not brought up even in books about Feng Shui. We've got to take care of these things. We've got to concentrate on them. And the first one is the idea of security. And I know where you're probably thinking, but I'm not talking about if you have a deadbolt on your front door. I'm not talking about an alarm system. I'm talking about that subconscious part of things right now, making sure that we feel very safe in our environment. And if they feel very safe in their environment because we've done a good job with the Feng Shui, then they feel very, very comfortable. And if they feel very comfortable, all sort of good things can happen. They'll be able to concentrate more. They'll be more creative. They'll be more successful in any endeavor that they take on. So we start with the idea of making sure that anybody that walks into your listing comes off as being very, very secure. Again, safety and security, very important. Sadly, the human race hasn't changed much. We still have the idea of all this anger and being frightened and all that kind of stuff. So our first reaction, or the potential buyer's first reaction when entering a new environment like your listing, is there a threat? Do I need to fight or flee? Am I safe? That probably doesn't sound possible nowadays. But again, we're not wired any differently. So does it make sense that we need to take away any idea of a threat? We need to make them as comfortable as quickly as possible. So if they don't feel that way, they feel insecure and they're not comfortable, here are some of the things that happen in your showing. They're less focused. They're less comfortable. They stay a lot less time in that house. They don't remember things. And a person who lives there will be less productive. None of these things are good. And of course, they'll be less secure. So we want to make sure that our listings don't feel that way. We've got to make them comfortable as quickly as possible. And one of the ways we do that is we handle what's called a poison arrow in feng shui. Poison arrows create stress, insecurity when you're in an environment and you don't even know why you feel this way often. Pretty much all of us have walked into an environment at some time in their life and for no reason at all, and not knowing why, didn't feel comfortable. You can imagine if your listing made people feel that way. Your house is going to be on the market a long time. So if you look at these pictures, every one of them has a poison arrow in it. Picture on the left has a roof line that points at houses. So it can certainly be a problem. The one on the top right, those kind of ceilings create a problem for us too. We don't feel real comfortable. And then the picture down on the right probably gives you even a better example. Notice the planters have sharp corners that point when somebody walks up to the door. So in all these ways, we try to soften them as much as possible. So you're going to learn how to soften the inside and the outside as much as possible to create more security, more comfort. But we've got to attract them first. Let's face it. Without attracting them, you're not going to get the traffic that you need. And as I stated before, from the 8 most impressionable moments, the first one, the curb appeal, is the first thing for a reason. It is the most important thing. Nowadays, curb appeal sort of lends itself to web appeal. You've got to attract the buyer on the internet, even more so than at the curb. Because 75% or more of the homes that are actually seen and found are by the buyer on the internet. So we've got to make sure it pops, the photos pop, that the money shots are really super. So we talk a lot about that too. So we've got to make sure that we get that interest, that enthusiasm stoked, so that when they're on Trulia, when they're on Realtor.com, they take the time to stop and really look at your home. But as I said on the bottom here, if you're pricing it too high, it doesn't matter if we're talking the Taj Mahal, it's not going to show. It's not going to be seen very, very much at all. Now, again, we're going to be going over each one of the tests. And the first test is curb appeal. And curb appeal has an awful lot of parts to it. Now, we're not going to get into that in this video, but I do want you to understand that we're going to cover each test very, very closely. Now, the number one goal of a real estate agent or a home stager or a homeowner, especially if they're trying to sell by themselves, is to do this. They want to sell it quickly and for top dollar. We all have the same goal. The longer it's on the market, the more frustration the seller is going to have, probably even you yourself, the agent. So we want to make sure that we sell as fast as possible. So there are two major things that we're always looking for. Number one, we want to make it so attractive from the outside that they just have to make an appointment to see the inside. That's number one. And again, that seeps right over to the web, to the internet. We've got to make it so attractive when they see those pictures that it's going to make them want an appointment. And secondly, we want it to be so comfortable inside that they don't even want to leave. So those are the two major ingredients. Make it so attractive outside and make it so comfortable inside. Now, I push a particular system which handles what I would call the window. To me, the window is when you have to sell a house or you're going to be in for a long period of time on the internet. And none of us want to do that. And you know, the longer you are on, the more frustration your client has, and the more possibilities that they're going to want to withdraw it from you and give it to somebody else if you're not getting it done quickly. So the window in my case is the first 4 weeks. So in my listing appointments when I was a real estate agent, I talked about the importance of making sure that we prepared before we put the house on the market so that we'd sell quick. And if we didn't do the preparation, we were in a way wasting our time. You never want to take a listing and just put it on the market that night. It just doesn't work. So I use this in my marketing, in my listing presentation, and we'll talk about those things too in the next few weeks. I wanted to come off as unique. I wanted to come off as different. And I even offer things like guarantees that, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And if you're not happy with that, you know, if we don't take care of that, then you have every reason to go ahead and find somebody else. But in more cases than not, I would take care of it. So the idea was to have the homeowner spend at least 1 week, and I would prefer to make it a little longer, to get it ready. And I would go through the house, take several hours, filling out a sheet, filling out a checklist that you're going to be getting a 12-page checklist that actually spelled things out for them, what they needed to do. And the nice thing about feng shui is that it's very inexpensive to do these things. Very. You don't have to have an awful lot of expensive furniture to move in or whatever. You actually take things out more than you bring things in. So by using a few accessories, by making sure we work on certain areas of the home, those 8 most impressionable moments, for example, you know, we would take care of it. We get it sold within the window. And then I would tell them, the idea again is to take 1 or 2 weeks to get it ready, and I'd sell it within 4 or less. That was the way I said things. So a home for sale must feel positive and full of opportunity again. That's what we all want. Today's buyers really want to do this. They don't want to do an awful lot of work. So we've got to make sure that everything is working well, that it's well cleaned up, that there's no clutter, and so forth. So we make it so they can move in, relax, play golf, okay, and not have to worry about doing some things that they don't want to mess with. They don't want to paint. They don't want to clean. So that's what we're looking for. And I promise you, even you yourself, a homeowner, wants this too. They want to do as little as possible, and they want their home to be coming off as very attractive. So good feng shui improves our lives by decreasing stress. And if you decrease stress in the selling situation, believe me, you're going to get a lot better outcomes also. The feng shui is thousands of years old. Depending on whatever book you pick up, it can be 2,000 or 3,000 years old. But it does work. It does work. It creates that harmony we're looking for. It creates that balance, which creates ongoing success. So thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to our first webinar, and look for that first invitation. Thank you.